Good morning, everyone. I'm Denise Hill, and I'm the Head of Engagement at Visit Scotland. And along with my colleague, Chris Greenwood, I'm going to today be talking with you on the topic of planning, and in particular, scenario planning, as we work to find our way through the next steps and out through the other side of the COVID pandemic. Many of you will be familiar already with the work of Visit Scotland. You'll be familiar with the resources that we have developed and that we share predominantly on our big hub for industry, the VisitScotland.org website. On there, as you'll be aware, many of you, we share ongoing a lot of insights, a lot of data, ongoing updates on the impact of COVID on industry, global tourism industry, but also at home in the context of the Scottish tourism industry. There's research and insights in there about our customer base, all of the key markets, all of those now most important for us in Scotland at this point in time, but also looking at our industry and conducting research with our partners into the state of the industry in Scotland as we work our way through the pandemic. So lots of data, lots of insights, lots of seminars happening, and many of you, I'm sure, will have joined some of the seminars that we've been doing, like the first to return seminars on those visitors that we expect to be our biggest opportunities in the very near future, and the near future information on those, insights on those, but also importantly the opportunity to discuss and think about how we need to adapt our tourism offering for those markets and those particular segments. There has been an enormous amount done and excellent work done, particularly in the self-catering sector, it has to be said, identifying issues, identifying gaps where support is needed, and providing that to government and to important bodies like the STERG body as well, who is working to support industry through this time. Huge amount of work done by ASSC, excellent work on that side done by Fiona and the ASSC right now to try and address that very immediate need for industry. Today's session asks us to look forward and to very much be looking towards the future and asking any of us to plan at a time when it is so difficult to anticipate what is going to happen next. Nothing is happening on a straight trajectory. We've long been using terminology like respond, reset, restart, and recover. But as the pandemic has rolled out and as it's played its way out, there have been starts and false starts and restarts, and yeah, I think we would all agree it's an incredibly difficult time to plan in. But planning will be absolutely critical if we're to come out the other end of this, to restart as successfully as we possibly can. But at the same time as doing that, hopefully to be putting in place some groundwork that will allow a recovery that will see us strong and into the future. Working closely with STERG, they were keen very early on as a group to look at the question of scenario planning and asked Visit Scotland to do some work on this. And our Insights Manager, Chris Greenwood, who you're going to hear from this morning, was invited together with his team to pull together some work on precisely that. And an excellent piece of work was created, which looked at scenario planning from the point of view of the tourism industry and with specific reference to COVID time. Chris won't mind me saying that the first stage in creating this was a document, was a resource that was for want of a better word, a little bit academic perhaps, but we very quickly looked at this, and together we have taken it and developed from it, we hope, a resource that will be useful for industry, a practical resource which can be used by individual businesses to help them with their planning. The toolkit, and you see here the front cover of that toolkit, the STERG Scenario Planning Toolkit, was published and at the back end of last year, and we announced that and promoted that, and it's up on our VisitScotland.org website. But we wanted to not just put it up there and hope that people would use it, but we were keen to see how would it work in practice, and could we make it easier, more helpful for businesses out there. So the idea came about that we wanted to road test this with businesses, and in particular to look at doing exercise with particular sector groups, which we hoped would be useful. And ASSC, Fiona and the ASSC were enormously helpful in helping us to pull together a group. They were our first group that we did, a group session, to sit down together and work through the scenario planning toolkit, the exercises that contains, the considerations in there of the SWOT, the strengths and the weaknesses, the opportunities and the threats, as these pertain to the self-catering sector, and then to look at the learnings from that and what they can help us to learn, what they can help us to think in terms of addressing the scenarios. And there are multiple, but I'll leave that to Chris to share with you, but how we would address the scenarios that we may yet still face as we work through this summer and onward, we hope, into recovery. We don't think we've got all of the answers here. We know that what's needed is a differentiated approach here, hence the workshop that we did in preparation with some of your peers. So we don't think we've got all the answers, but what we do have here is a resource that I hope will be really helpful, in that it's been worked through with your peers, a selection of self-catering businesses, and they've shared with us their thoughts, their ideas, and we've gathered these outputs with the intention then of creating this presentation today, which we would be able to share with a wider audience and let you see. The thoughts that group have had, they may or may not match exactly with your business and your experience, but we do hope that it's at very least going to be a really useful starter for businesses as they sit down to look at the planning toolkit, start to use it, and start to develop some plans on the back of this. So at this point, I'll just say that we have allowed some time for questions after Chris's part of the presentation. So we will take any questions there that we can, but please do use the chat and the question function here on GoToWebinar today. If you have any thoughts or any questions as we work through this, please do pop them into the sidebar there, and we will look to try and use those in that session when that comes up too. So now, just before we hand over to Chris Greenwood, our Insight Manager, I would like first to hand over to Fiona Campbell, Chief Executive of the ASSC, who's been so helpful in pulling together that workshop for us, our first, as I said. So up first, top ranking, that's great. And yeah, so much help from Fiona on that. It's been really helpful, and I hope you're going to find it helpful too. Fiona, do you want to say a few words?
Thanks, Denise. That's fantastic. I mean, I absolutely concur. We are in uncharted territories, and planning is going to be absolutely critical going forward. So I hope that this session is going to be really, really useful. When we were approached by Visit Scotland to put together some tools for our members and indeed the entire sector to be able to adapt to the changes and challenges that are coming up ahead of us, we absolutely jumped at the chance. So I'd really like to thank Denise, Patrick, Chris and the team at Visit Scotland for all the hard work in putting together this scenario planning workshop, gathering all the data, collating so that you can all get a better understanding of the way ahead and potential options and what we might face. It all started a couple of weeks ago when we put together a cohort of fabulous self-catering operators, members that represent a wide cross-section of the sector from different areas in Scotland, different sizes and shapes of operations. We all came together to explore thoughts and ideas, to identify opportunities looking forwards and discover what does that look like. And I hope that what we've created will give you some food for thought going forwards, and that this is going to be a really useful tool for you to use going forwards. So enjoy the session and we'll look forward to some questions at the end. But right now, Chris, over to you.
Thank you very much, Fiona. As has been mentioned before, we've been running a series of sessions around the scenarios, and hopefully over the next short while I'll be able to just articulate some of those findings and hopefully be able to provide you with the outputs that will be valuable in terms of your use in being able to apply these to your own strategies. Over the next sort of 20 or so minutes, what I'm going to do is provide you with a brief overview of some of the other research that we had, just outlining what we believe happened during the summer of 2020, and some recent consumer sentiment work that was published last week about domestic consumer sentiment for the forthcoming year. Then go through the scenario planning process, just to explain that and relate it back to the toolkit, which is available to download from the VisitScotland.org website, and then go into the findings, which obviously are very specific to the self-catering sector, and we think would be of value to yourselves in terms of your kind of planning in terms of flexibility and agility, especially in these uncertain times. As I said at many other events, we know that this is a particularly challenging time. I think when we went into the first lockdown in March of 2020, we were all under the belief that 2021 was going to see the start of recovery. Having the situation at the start of this year, where we've seen another national lockdown for Scotland, the second national lockdown, although there were the localised lockdowns throughout the Central Belt, and for the rest of the UK, their third possible lockdown. We are sort of conscious that at this particular point in time, it is very challenging. I think as we look forwards and hopefully with the vaccine program sort of delivering results in falling cases, and we start to see the hyper-local sort of market reaching out to then the domestic market, and then in the future the international market, there are some fantastic opportunities, and to be able to think about your products, your potential customer, how those are going to be changed by all these different situations and levels of uncertainty. We think that scenario planning is an excellent tool in being able to address that. So if I, as I said, move on to look at an overview of 2020. During around about sort of May of last year, Visit Scotland has conducted a regular UK resident consumer sentiment survey. We don't have the regular kind of quantitative monitors measuring the volume and value of tourism. Many of these were based on face-to-face surveys, which obviously were suspended by people like the Office of National Statistics, for safety concerns, not only of the interviewers, but interviewees as well. Anyway, we've been conducting regular online surveys of UK consumers, and what we found in early October, we found that around about 30% of UK residents had taken an overnight holiday in the UK. And for Scotland, there was a particularly high proportion of Scots residents taking holidays in Scotland, which, you know, is obviously a healthy thing to do. It should be remembered that the UK population makes up around about 70% of the total number of overnight trips within Scotland, and of that, it's an almost equal kind of split between Scots residents and rest of UK residents. So, you know, we did have quite a strong Scots market that were taking holidays within Scotland. We found that countryside, rural areas, mountains, coastal areas, these were the popular destinations, and obviously many of us were speculating that people were avoiding cities, you know, initially at the start of the year. Although we did find that actually cities were a popular destination and hotels were a popular destination. However, you know, there was this underlying kind of trend that people wanted to go out into rural areas, have fresh air, have open spaces, and because of that, self-catering and camping and caravanning were amongst the most popular accommodation for overnight holidays. Camping and caravanning particularly during the summer, but for self-catering, compared to things like bed and breakfast, guest houses, hostels, where I think there was a perception that self-catering was the control, the perception of safety, the reputation of the sector were very much kind of front of mind with people choosing, you know, accommodation. So, you know, if people felt they were more in control of their environment, you know, that was a more popular choice, and I think there was also flexibility that should be incorporated into there. So, you know, we saw that during the summer there was lots of positives that were coming through, and obviously I would be interested to hear from yourselves about you know, your perceptions of how the summer went. As I said, we also had our latest wave of consumer sentiment survey published at the end of last week, and this was taken during January, so it was just around about the start of the announcement of lockdown. And whilst there was, as would be expected, people's attitudes or outlook was quite sort of downbeat. People weren't that optimistic about things getting back to normal very quickly. We did find that around about a third of UK residents were expecting to take more or the same number of overnight domestic trips between now and the end of June. Obviously, now being when they can travel. So, you know, there is, as we kind of predicted, a building, a pent-up demand for people wanting to take trips, and I think there's a realization that domestic holidays will probably be the most available and realistic option for many people, you know, certainly in the first half or summer season for 2021. We've got again, sort of coastal areas, country and countryside, village, rural areas are coming out as the preferred destination types for people's trips up until around about sort of June of this year. And whilst hotel does feature in the accommodation choice, again, what was referred to as commercial rentals, you know, the self-catering sector and camping and caravanning are all equal with hotels in terms of the accommodation type being chosen, again with kind of 32% of the market share. So, you know, it's certainly self-catering is a preferred choice for people, the domestic market. I think what is directly of interest to people is that booking directly with the accommodation provider is the leading method for booking trips, with around about 41% of respondents saying that. OTAs come out as the next most preferred channel with a quarter of respondents. And I think it goes back to those people that have been on other webinars about kind of digital boost and things like that. Having an online presence, having online booking, something along those sort of lines is increasingly important for having a presence, especially as people want to book directly. I think it's because people want to be able to ask questions about, you know, what are the procedures, you know, what are the rules for your individual property? Is there anything that I need to know about the area, or I need to bring, you know, and you know, are there going to be any changes, and will you let me know? So having that direct relationship with the provider is increasingly seen as key to people sort of building a relationship with the people that they want to engage with commercially in travel and tourism. So that is a piece of work that we are conducting and continue to conduct. And again, I would refer you to the VisitScotland.org website, where you can find additional information on that. And I hope that just puts into context the next bit, which is going to be looking at the scenario planning exercise. So just to clarify, what is scenario planning? As I said, we don't have our usual kind of monitors of volume and value from which we can project forecasts, and also being able to predict when is recovery going to occur, what is the volume of people, and what are their profile. We don't have that kind of stable baseline of data to be able to do those projections. So we're reverting to scenario planning, and this particular exercise was done for STERG, the Scottish Tourism Emergency Response Group, which is coordinating with the Scottish Government the recovery strategy action plan in coordination with the tourism industry. But there are other scenario planning exercises going on. Scottish Enterprise has been conducting an exercise which has a longer kind of time horizon. These scenarios were very much for the short term, so they were to go from July of last year and go through 18 months, when we thought at the end of 2021 we would have a you know, we'd be on the road to recovery, and that you know, we would be building up to maybe a greater opening of the economy. Obviously, with the situation as it is, and sort of the resurgence of COVID, and you know, being in the lockdown that we're in, the scenarios remain valid because it's meant to take us through this period of uncertainty, leading us through to recovery. So you know, the scenarios remain valid, but they were very much for the short term to see us through to, you know, the next phase of recovery, you know, the reopening of tourism. So scenarios, they aren't a vision or you know, a prediction of the future. What they are is they're looking at a particular system, in our case tourism within Scotland, and we try and identify what are the variables that are going to influence tourism activity and behaviour within that system. So a lot of work goes into understanding how tourism is operating, what are those factors, what are the uncertainties, what are the assumptions that we have to make. One of the assumptions was, you know, there was a vaccine program in place. And from that, we can define these kind of stories that are the scenarios. And from this, we can take those scenarios, and when you're developing your strategy and your business plan, you can apply your business plan or your strategy to each of the scenarios. So should one of these scenarios start to develop or become increasingly more dominant, you can then sort of say, is my strategy fit for purpose? What do I need to change to my strategy? What do I need to adapt in my strategy so that I can respond should this kind of future, this scenario start to develop? So as I said, this isn't a prediction. We're not trying to aim towards one scenario, even though that may be the optimal sort of vision for your strategy. It could be that we're stuck in one of the other scenarios. So with that, when we were doing the workshops, we were concentrating on two scenarios. You can see from the chart that the two variables that we thought were most dominant in defining tourism at this particular point in time was consumer confidence and business operations. So, you know, if you think following the lockdown last year and into the summer of 2020 through to now, consumers can either travel or they can't travel, or they will be confident in traveling or insecure in traveling. Think about people who are sheltering. And businesses can operate fully, or they can operate in a restricted manner, or indeed they could be shut down due to lockdown. So we thought those were the most dominant factors that were influencing tourism. And from that, we managed to formulate 5 scenarios. The first scenario is one that we call the baseline scenario. And if you think about it, this was the world as it was when tourism restarted following lockdown in July 2020. So businesses could operate, people were traveling, but markets were influenced. So we didn't necessarily have the international markets. We had a domestic market, as we saw a high proportion of Scots residents taking trips within Scotland. Physical distancing was in place. Some businesses didn't reopen because it wasn't necessarily economically viable for them, thinking about the visitor attractions sector. You know, hygiene factors need to be put in place. You know, all these things had to be done. So that was our baseline scenario, and that's what we are expecting recovery, you know, the reopening of tourism this year to look like. You know, that phased reopening of tourism that we saw in July 2020. The other scenario that we concentrated on in the workshops was one that we called 5 winters. Now, as was pointed out to me at a recent event with Cairngorms Business Partnership, you know, winter can actually be quite a profitable time for those that are relying on winter sports. But 5 winters represented 3 to 5 quarters of low season performance, like, you know, a consecutive 5 quarters of low season performance. And if you think about it, what you have there is it could be the situation we're in now. So consumers can't travel, businesses can't open, we're in lockdown, or, you know, we've got a situation where if businesses can operate in some way, maybe it's people taking in key workers, you know, that kind of thing. It's very limited operations, very restrictive. Markets are very restrictive as well. So those are the 2 scenarios that we concentrated on when we were looking at the workshops, because we thought those were most relevant to the world we're dealing with. But the other scenarios that are involved, and these are available within the toolkit, are scenario 2, which is the old normal. So that's essentially what the world was like in, you know, 2019, so pre-pandemic. So think about those worlds. But in that, you might want to think about your strategy. If you're developing a strategic business plan, how have things changed now? So, you know, there's a lot more focus on sustainability and wellness and mindfulness and things like that. So it may be that, you know, what you did in 2019, you might want to adapt to changing consumer behaviors now. Scenario 3 was doors open, and that's one where businesses are operating, but the consumer, the traveller, is constrained, either nervous of travel or they're unable to travel. And we think this is representative of the the Highlands or the borders, during that kind of central belt lockdown that we had over the Easter period. So you have businesses that were open, could operate, but the market wasn't there. So as a self-caterer in the Highlands, for example, if you can't get the visitors from Glasgow or Edinburgh because they're in a localized lockdown, what market do you go after? I mean, is the hyper-local market something that is available to you, and you can tap into and access? Scenario 4 was the one that was called the long chill, and this is one where the consumers are able to travel or want to travel, but there's very restrictive business operating, and we saw this as maybe the Scottish cities or maybe the Central Belt during lockdown, where businesses weren't able to travel, or you had to look at diversification. I mean, outside of self-catering, possibly looking at hotels and restaurants, developing home delivery services and takeaways, that kind of thing, to meet the needs of the consumer that wants to travel but isn't able to. So those were our 5 scenarios, and from there we developed a SWOT analysis. So we started to look at the self-catering sector. What is it about the self-catering sector? What is its strengths and weakness? What are the opportunities and threats? That internal, external kind of matrix that we sort of see. Now, lots of ideas were brought in, and we are going to be producing a document that we will publish alongside the toolkit that you'll be able to download and look at this in more detail. But I've kind of synthesized the strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats into these kind of 3 kind of key areas. So the workshop pulled out that strengths were self-catering is seen as a trusted and safe tourism provider, but particularly by domestic audiences. Also, there is flexibility within the operating model. So as many of you are owner-operators, you're able to adapt as you see fit quite quickly to changing situations. You're also a very diverse sector. There are self-caterers throughout Scotland, in urban areas, rural areas, islands, highlands, central belt, and it's quite a diverse product from large occupancy properties to very small, very niche kind of properties as well. So you've got that strength going with it. In terms of weaknesses, there is a perception that the client and the owner can be quite distant. Maybe if you own multiple properties, you're reliant on managers to handle the actual relationship, or maybe you could be remote completely. So you're only engaging with people through email or social media or things like that. And people, once people arrive at the property, there's not that connection between the client and the property owner. The workshop pulled out that historically the sector isn't necessarily collaborative with the local area or other areas of tourism. Obviously that could be sort of like a generalization and not the case kind of specifically. But also there was also quite restrictive operating conditions. People rely on sort of local staff for cleaning, and if people are homeschooling and things like that, those staff might be unavailable, which obviously would cause problems in being able to operate the business. There's also sort of a lot of talk around sort of suppliers and things like that. Anyway, the opportunities that presents is there's the possibility of cooperation with other local businesses, sort of tying in with other tourism businesses in the tourism community. There's also many untapped and captive markets. We saw that a third of the UK population are going to take possibly the same or more domestic breaks in 2021. So you've got that captive market, and obviously you've got the possibility of new models that you could bring in. So being more flexible over periods of rental. If people want to arrive midweek, or they want to have shorter periods of time, or they want to have extended stay, possibly because they see this is a place where they could maybe do distance working or something like that. You know, that there are opportunities there to develop those. And of course, the threats are the ones that are quite established, you know, legislation and licensing, you know, financing for small businesses, which we know is an issue, and also what we refer to as wider tourism community. And we saw this with other sectors that we dealt with in terms of, you know, should I open if the visitor attractions aren't open? Will people want to come to the area if there's nothing else to do? So, you know, there are those issues that were identified. If we sort of take that, we can take the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, that SWOT, which we have on the outside of this table, and we start combining those. So if we take strengths and opportunities, how do we maximize those opportunities, you know, from the strengths that have been identified, and how do you minimize the weaknesses, you know, by capitalizing on the opportunities? And the same with the threats. How do you minimize the threats through the strengths you've got, and how do you minimize the weaknesses, you know, to diminish the threats that have been identified? So we can take those and we can start applying those to come up with some maybe solutions. And in the workshop, we concentrate on looking at customers and suppliers and product, and we're going to come on and show, you know, what were the ideas that came out of that you might be able to apply into your business plan. So if we look at capitalizing the strengths, so maximizing the opportunities from the strengths that were identified and minimizing the threats, you know, what we saw was, you know, the sector has massive strengths in being able to innovate and take opportunities for that. So, you know, there appears to be a market for people wanting personalization, maybe service self-catering, where, you know, additional products can be provided at added value, thinking about like collaborating with restaurants and cafes, produce meal boxes and takeaways and things like that. So you can start building a luxury product around that. Using local suppliers, you know, as I said, providing takeaways from restaurants, meal boxes, but also providing details of supermarket kind of click and deliver, you know, so you know, getting food deliveries through to people and making them aware where the nearest supermarkets and things are. Big uptake on dog ownership, and therefore, you know, are you dog friendly, and is that a capacity that you'd be able to incorporate into that and promote? And also, we find that people want to give back to the community, so people want to travel and minimize the impact that they perceive tourism and travel can have on the environment. So, you know, can you identify volunteering opportunities? Are there initiatives within your local areas for being able to offer people who want to maybe do volunteerism, you know, volunteering, you know, rewilding opportunities, you know, things like that, as an activity that people will see that they're giving back to the local area. Talked about increasing markets. Obviously, there is, you know, the economic value that can be made from developing the accessible options in terms of people with disabilities and things like that. There's a huge market, and also one where referral goes a long way to you know, promote your product. And there's also, you know, so LGBTQ friendly, pet friendly, you know, but there's also, you know, like the family market, an extended family market, you know, people who have been quite distant wanting to come together, but obviously, you know, would want to stay in their own properties so that they can still comply with whatever rules and regulations are still in place. As mentioned before, online bookable is obviously central to that, collaborating with activity suppliers, so people are aware of what the opportunities are. So if your area has great walks or cycling opportunities, or, you know, sort of water activities, you know, that many people have started taking up open water swimming and paddle boarding, you know, is there some way that you can promote that through to your area? Local initiatives, as we said, for rewilding, but also I think for the sector, there's the loyalty of repeat visitors to destinations and providers. You know, being able to ensure that you keep regular communication, because people, you know, see an area and want to return to it, and the sector has a great history of being able to capitalize on the loyalty repeat business. Looking at the weaknesses, you know, how do you minimize those weaknesses through your opportunities and diminish the threats, you know, through those through minimizing the weakness? Well, you know, we talk about good communication, you know, so the use of social media, you know, and also it's the role that inspiring content has. So if you can develop a following for your social media channels, if you've got stunning views that change, particularly now where we're seeing change the seasons from, you know, snow to sunshine, spring is on the way, you know, flowers are going to be coming out, or you've got like a, shall we say, a particularly charismatic pine marten that is a regular visitor to your area. These are things that people follow, and you know, you can keep your product front of mind. Pricing and revenue management, being able to have dynamic pricing policy so that you can, you know, people may be trying to book last minute, you know, to get short lead times. Being able to have dynamic pricing will be something that be able to provide opportunities for you to fill empty space, or be able to capitalize on maybe increasing demand if you see that. Having the right certification, you know, the good to go scheme provides that reassurance to people that your property is healthy, you know, following regulation in terms of hygiene standards, and being able to post the right information on what is open. And this kind of feeds through to the collaboration, you know, being able to work with other businesses in the area. So what restaurants are open, what innovation and diversification are they having? You know, are restaurants providing takeaways so people can have, you know, quality food offerings in their self-catering property, or indeed those meal box options? But what visitor attractions are open as well, and can you feed through to the visitor attractions, you know, the type of volumes of people and the type that are coming through? Would that tempt them to maybe open up more, or maybe provide more kind of facility, so that there is a good product, a wider product that is available to people when they come? But I think there's also that sensitivity of the community, and we know that one of the things that came through was this concern that in particular in rural areas that there'll be this influx of people. Now hopefully that would diminish with vaccine rollout, but you know, it's still something that, you know, as a professional sector like yourself, you can sort of like, you know, sort of like reassure the community that you'll be operating in a responsible way, and the people that are coming in are going to be following the rules and regulations just as you would hope that they would. So in summary, you know, what can we see? Well, we know that domestic consumers have highlighted self-catering as one of their preferred accommodation choices during certainly during the summer of 2020, but also for the first half of 2021. The strengths and opportunities of the sector are based around your agility, adaptability, and familiarity. People understand the product, and therefore that is reassuring for them. And the weaknesses and the threats can very much be minimized through your own confidence, innovation, and flexibility. So, you know, we know that all tourism sectors are stronger in collaboration, certainly at a local level. So if you're supporting local suppliers, you know, that provides this dynamic environment that you know, allows tourism to flourish, not only in terms of other tourism operators like activity and attractions, but also local artisans, because people like to have that kind of that experience of a destination, that you know, it's not just this kind of generic product that they're having, that they're actually immersed within the local area. So if there are particular products that you know, really define your area in terms of food offerings, or you know, quality crafts, you know, those are the types of things that people want to see and engage with. But that communication and certainly the ASSC is as an organisation one that really does have strong communication, not only with its members but also with the wider tourism community. So we feel that self-catering is in a positive situation to drive forwards, but I really put it to yourselves how you feel you're going to plan, prepare, and position to respond to the future. And we hope that these scenarios and the information that we developed will help you have flexible and agile business planning and strategies to be able to respond to whatever's going to be facing us in the future. So thank you very much. I'm now going to ask Denise to join us, and I think we've got a short time for some questions.
Yeah, I think we've got a few questions in. Our helpful team behind the scenes have answered most of these already, but this is the moment.
Thank you.
This is the moment if there are any further questions, or for that matter, thoughts on the content that you've heard as well. Among the questions there were people just looking for reassurance that we will be circulating or sharing these resources, and I can confirm that yes, our idea here is that while already upon VisitScotland.org there is the Planning Toolkit published, we want to use today's presentation, which is being recorded, and the materials that we gathered during the developmental workshop with the self-catering peers to create, if you like, I'm calling them companion pieces. So we've got the toolkit proper up on the website, on .org, and also these specific sector companion pieces will be up there as well. So as soon as we're able, after the session, the team will be making sure that this presentation and resources go up onto VisitScotland.org and can be accessed from there. I think one of the questions that came in was about the gathering and the assessment of the impact of lost business and capacity on self-catering, Fiona. I know Melanie has already responded on that there, but is there anything that you'd like to say, Fiona, about the process of gathering in that intelligence and that assessment and the sharing with government and the government bodies to make sure that that is heard?
Well, I think, I mean, we have an incredibly engaged sector, which is fantastic, and we've got an amazing membership that is really dedicated to producing the best possible product. And I think, you know, as Chris has already said, we're in an amazing position to bounce back really, really strongly after this pandemic, once we kind of navigate the potholes that we have ahead of us. The ASSC, well, pre-COVID and during COVID, has constantly sought the views of our membership via all the surveys that we put out. And those have been so helpful in order to give that data and those thoughts to government and Visit Scotland and everybody else that lobbies on our behalf, and of course the Scottish Tourism Alliance. So, you know, everything that we do is to try and support the sector, and everything that Visit Scotland is doing is really, really helpful. And everything that you've said today, Chris, is just really valuable in terms of looking to the future, because right now it's looking awfully murky out there. But, you know, all the surveys and all the information and intelligence that we gather is just so helpful in creating some hope for the future.
Thanks, that's great. Question here perhaps for Chris, and that is again looking at different audiences, different sectors, you know, different consumer bases, and the question is about the LGBT community and the degree to which you think, Chris, that the LGBT community requires different or demand exclusive hosted accommodation offers.
Yeah, so I just responded back to that one in the chat, but I think no, we're not identifying sort of the LGBT community as separate to others. I think it's a case of being aware of sort of different sectors and groups. So we talked about, you know, sort of accessible, you know, LGBT and sort of family groups, you know, things like that. If you can identify the sort of communications channels that these groups are aware of, and you know, be able to share your messaging, you can target these groups more specifically with messages. So, you know, LGBT friendly properties obviously then starts, the same with accessible people with accessibility needs. You start to get referrals, and word of mouth, of course, is a much cheaper form of marketing, and it's also one that you can sort of build quite a wide sort of customer base for repeat business. So it's not a case of providing kind of exclusive properties for these, but everything from sort of like if you're going for families groups, Mumsnet is obviously a fantastic facility to be able to go through to target families. So it's just being aware of different groups that maybe you hadn't thought of before if you wanted to go out with targeted messages. And I think there's a lot of information out there about how to provide that targeted marketing.
Thanks, Chris. There's a question in around the likelihood of international visitors this year. And as with so many questions, it really is so very difficult to know. But I think what we're doing certainly on that side from Visit Scotland is working very closely together with our colleagues over in Transport Scotland. In other years, we work on our Team Scotland Aviation project, which is all about introducing new and extended capacity with airlines into Scotland. At the moment, we are tracking what is happening with those key routes that serve us from our visitor markets, and keeping in touch with those airlines. The prospect now of not just isolation on return into the country or arrival into the country, but of managed quarantine or managed isolation in hotels has immediately had an impact on the capacity that we've had. It was already slim, and the number of flights in and out of Scotland, for obvious reasons, were very much reduced, but in the last 10 days that has gone down even further. The Airline Routes Conference happened at the back end of December. Now, things have changed even since then, but what I can report is, in general, a desire for the key airlines who serve us to be coming back into Scotland, very much so. No hint that they would wish to withdraw from Scotland and use this as an opportunity to do so. But it's clear that until visitor numbers can be regenerated again, there is no great opportunity for them. I think, in short, the way things are looking right now, my own personal assessment working with these guys is a likelihood of a focus on that Scottish market through the summer months. And we genuinely hope that we will start to see return of capacity from the international markets in some kind of serious format by the end of the year. That is very likely to be those links to the big international hubs. So our connectivity with KLM and Air France and Lufthansa, and of course via Heathrow as well, with the Middle Eastern carriers, with Emirates and Qatar still continuing to operate as well. And with a high likelihood, is my personal, again, estimation, that North American traffic will be very limited towards the back end of the year, but likely to return at the beginning of next year. My estimation, but at the moment it's ongoing and a changing feast. But we keep tabs ongoing with these airlines and try to keep the conversation there as warm as it can possibly be under the circumstances. We've got 5 minutes left. Now, there are some questions there that are unanswered just now, but we will make sure that we pick up on those and do provide answers to them. So keep watching afterwards. At this point, then, I think probably have to quickly just sum up and say thanks again to everyone. I know Chris said earlier on that when he was very much summing up the strengths of your sector, of the self-catering sector, that of all sectors, you're in one of the stronger positions, which is something at this difficult time to celebrate. As we said earlier on, scenario planning doesn't predict the future, but it hopefully does help us to decide what it is that we need to do now in order to shape our futures. So I do hope that you'll feel inspired after this to download the scenario toolkit from VisitScotland.org, and whether you do it as an exercise for yourself or with your team, or perhaps as a small group, work through it and use the companion piece, use the insights and the content that Chris has shared today to give you that starter for 10. Next steps, we will be putting this stuff up onto .org. The slide that you can see just now is just a reminder, and that will be shared as well, of the various different resources that are out there if you're looking for information or if you're looking for advice. So we'll make sure that that is circulated as well. Thank you again to everybody for allowing us to make use of your ASSC Talks forum to be able to share this today. And thank you very much, everyone, for your participation. I really do hope it's given good food for thought. And I'll hand over just for a last comment to Fiona. Thanks, Fiona.
Thanks, Denise. I'd just like to thank you all so much for the huge amount of work that has gone into doing this. And I'd also like to thank the team of self-caterers that joined into the first workshop that sort of gave the bones of this discussion. So thank you so much to everybody that's been involved in this. I think it's so important, as you've just said, to look to the future and work out how we can kind of plan for that future and navigate out of this horrendous situation that we all find ourselves in. On the subject of planning, we all know that the short-term let legislation is coming our way fast now. We believe that it may indeed go to Parliament and to a final vote tomorrow. So on the 23rd of February, we are having another ASSC talk with Joe Miller of Gilson Gray to basically look at what that legislation is going to do for the sector, what's it going to mean for your business, and how, again, we can plan going forwards to mitigate some of the unintended consequences and look to taking on yet another challenge, shall we say. So please book into the 23rd of February. But in the meantime, thank you, Visit Scotland, so much for this incredibly valuable session. And have a great day, everybody.